You know that UFC Fight Pass has a podcast all about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and ground fighting. It's called Ground Control, and I host it. I'm TJ Santis, along with Brandon Mccaghren, and we do this kind of infrequently. Kind of like if I were actually training Jiu-Jitsu, the amount of times we actually do ground control is about the amount of times I would show up to class.
Yeah, I think that's right. Actually, I think we probably do ground control a lot more.
That's true. That's why I trained for 5 years and never got a stripe on a white belt.
And I got to be honest with you. It's looking like that trend is going to continue.
All right. Well, we're here. Let's just find some sort of positive somewhere in this. How are you, B-Mac?
Man, I'm doing awesome. I'm happy to see you, man.
I'm happy to see you as well. Today we're going to cover a couple of topics that feel like they're taboo, but they need to be talked about. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that talk you have with your parents about the birds and the bees when it's like, I don't know if you necessarily need to have the talk, but you got to have some sort of talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what? I just posted a video this morning to my YouTube channel talking about one of these topics that we're going to hit today. And so I'm actually really eager to hear what you think about it.
All right. So let's talk about...
Not to bury the lead. I'll let you run.
I mean, let's get into it. We're going to talk about vitamins and vitamins that may or may not have some controversy with them because they're not vitamins at all. We're talking about steroids. We're talking about performance enhancers. We're talking about cheating, kind of, but not really at the same time. It's weird for me to sort of broach this topic because it seems like it's more of a moral argument at times than an actual argument of like right and wrong.
You know, if we're talking about steroids in the UFC,
hard line on that.
Just no question about it.
Right.
It's cheating.
Correct.
They're testing for it.
Right.
They're trying to make sure that you don't do it.
Yeah.
They're spending tons of money
to
test everybody all the time.
Yeah.
If you're taking steroids in the UFC,
it's illegal.
That's cheating, and it's illegal.
It's illegal.
All to do.
Right. Well,
now,
hang on. Steroids, at least if you live in the United States of America, steroids are illegal, period. I don't know what the laws are in every jurisdiction internationally. It's a big wide world out there.
But not all PEDs are illegal.
That is true. In fact, a lot of PEDs, I mean, Jeff Nowitzki's talked about this, the head of USADA for the UFC, that there are plenty of PEDs that you can get over the counter if you just don't get your supplements, looked at.
Yeah, not all PEDs are steroids. I think that's one thing in the discussion that a lot of people just use the term steroids as like an overall
one size fits all, if you will.
Grab everything.
Yeah.
So that's, steroids is probably not the right word to use. That's one of the many PEDs.
Right.
EPO is not a steroid. Blood doping is definitely not a steroid.
Right.
But it's against the rules.
Right. Testosterone's a steroid. But for a time, you could go to your doctor and get a note that said it wasn't cheating, believe it or not.
Yeah. And let's be honest. That was the best time.
Well, I mean, we could talk about Pride FC, and we could talk about the UFC, and we could talk about, there are all sorts of body types, right? It's a big wide world with many people inside of it, and, some people look jacked, and other people's don't, necessarily look as jacked, and sometimes they fought one another at the same time, and then there's, without saying too many names, there are plenty of guys out there that had multiple incarnations of themselves over different times of legalities and, moralities, if you will.
You may know the answer to this. As a man who is an aficionado, all things MMA, I have heard from several people that have seen the contracts, the old Pride contracts, that it was in big, bold letters in the contract.
Yes.
We do not test for PEDs, or we do not test for steroids.
I've seen one of those contracts.
So describe this. Like, where is it in the contract? Like,
it's definitely page 1.
It's right there on the front.
It's right there. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not only it's bold, it's underlined. And take from that what you will.
No way.
Yeah.
So really, they were just saying, listen, we would really like it if you would take steroids.
I don't think they were saying that. I think they were saying, we want you at your best.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever that means.
So we're talking about steroids in the UFC and in Pride. In the UFC at this time and for the last many years.
Yeah.
Absolutely against the rules.
100%. USADA's
Pride,
there. Yeah.
In Pride, we won't say absolutely encouraged, but not discouraged.
Definitely not discouraged. And with the UFC, too, I will say this. For the longest time with the UFC, it really never was up to the UFC on whether or not it was against the rules, in the sense that the UFC went to jurisdictions that were governed by independent athletic commissions, which it still is and does. But, since 2016 or so, they've brought in USADA, and that is an overseer of all athletes you sign with the UFC. You're subject to USADA testing policies and rules. But 15, 20 years ago, if you were fighting in, say, Mohegan Sun, you're subject to the rules by the Mohegan Athletic Commission.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you brought up USADA. That's who runs the testing for the UFC.
Correct.
I believe USADA also runs the testing for the IBJJF, which is like the world championships of jiu-jitsu, like the widely recognized world champion, especially in the gi. In the gi, it's definitely the IBJJF worlds is the standard. They test only people that hit the podium at the black belt adult level.
Which,
so only the adult world champions.
To me, I don't really like that idea. But that at the same time, a lot of jurisdictions pre-USADA in the UFC, they were really only testing like one or two guys at random on any card, but every title fight.
As far as I know, the IBJJF is the only organization in jiu-jitsu that has any sort of testing, and it is basically just like what everybody always says, IQ test. Like,
right.
If you hit the podium, you're going to be tested.
Right.
Only in this one. Like, if you're a brown belt and you go gold, I don't think they come after you. If you're a purple belt if you're a black belt and you almost hit the podium, you did well, but you didn't hit the podium, you're not going to get tested. Okay. The ADCC, which is the no-gi Olympics, like that's the Olympics of our sport.
Yes.
They have no testing, and it appears they have no intention of testing.
And how does that make you feel?
I don't mind it. And is not the steroids themselves. It's when people pretend that they're not taking steroids, or when they don't tell the truth about what they're doing. I think that that's a bigger stain on the person than getting caught taking steroids.
Right. It's like, what was that guy, social media dude? Liver King.
Yes. Great example.
Yeah.
Like, if he had just owned up from the beginning, when the very first person said to him, hey, looks like you're on steroids, everybody can see that.
Right.
If he would have just said, oh, yeah, I'm on steroids.
Right.
He'd still have a brand today.
100%. Because who gives a shit?
Stands,
who cares?
Nothing.
When you aren't taking a higher sort of, approach to it where you're almost rallying against it, I don't think anybody really cares what you're doing or not doing in your own personal life.
I don't know. In your own personal life.
In your own personal life.
But I don't think that that's true necessarily with combat sports. Now, I do think that, there's two issues. There's the, does it belong in sports or in fighting, and how do I feel about it?
Those are two very different things.
That's right. Does it belong? We can go, here's why, pros and cons.
Sure.
But that doesn't necessarily change how somebody feels about it. Some people are definitely, whether it's legal or not, whether it's accepted or not, are definitely going to have like this moral barrier up to accepting that.
Yeah.
and I have no issue with somebody who feels one way or the other about it. The issue that I have, the thing that drives me out of my mind, I can't stand it, is pretending like your doctor gave you, oh no, it must have been
Right.
the kangaroo meat, dude.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
must have been the kangaroo meat that did that. Oh, my doctor put it in my
Right. It's my Ovaltine,
Ovaltine.
dog. It's my Ovaltine.
Honestly, has there ever been anybody that got caught that was trying not to get caught? Has there ever been anybody that got caught that didn't say some variation of tainted supplement
Right.
or my doctor? The only person I can think of is the great and wise Chael Sonnen, who when they said Chael, when the commission asked him, Chael, did you take this knowing that it was going to provide performance enhancement? And he said, of course I knew it was going to enhance me. That's why I took it.
Yeah. I remember asking Chael about steroids one time, and he said he had more juice running through him than Tropicana. But I mean, Chael's a unique individual when it comes to that. Here's my issue. And this
don't crucify Chael because
he owned it.
That's right, man.
Yeah. And like, that's all you really want out of athletes. I think that's all you really want out of human beings, personally. Like, own your business. If no one asks you, maybe you don't have to go out of your way to be like, by the way, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. But if someone asks you, there's a dilemma that you introduce into the equation by lying.
Yeah. If you're like, just in your private life, if you're doing this, then if nobody asks, don't ask, don't tell. Sounds great. But I don't know that we can do that with the athletes. I feel like they should have to be forthright. If, like, it's just, man, we're not hitting a baseball over a fence.
We're
not seeing how far we can hit a baseball.
It's not tiddlywinks. We're hurting one another.
I'm trying to break your arm. I'm trying to choke you on. I'm trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to slam my fist into your face. And if you're not doing the same things I'm doing, you're going to have a major advantage over me. Or, like, if I'm not doing the same things you're doing, then you're going to have a major advantage over me.
Yeah. So getting to my sort of dilemma with it all is there are two things that I don't like. One, you've sort of hit the nail on the head. It's similar to, not exactly one-to-one with the idea of, I ate some kangaroo meat and it was bad. My idea, like, I didn't like the TRT era because, in my opinion, if you were using TRT, you were cheating, but you were getting a doctor's note to cheat. And my issue with that is, we live in the United States of America, where you can go find any doctor to give you any sort of note you really need to. You're not supposed to. Doctor shopping is a bad thing, but as long as you are someone of prominence, you're going to be able to find someone that you can give some money to, that they're going to go, you know what? Your testosterone's low. I don't even need to test you. I can just smell the low testosterone coming off you.
I'm agnostic to whether or not one should or should not take steroids, I think. Like, if it's inside the rules, I don't necessarily have a moral hang up on steroids themselves.
You're getting to my other part real quick. Real quick. You're getting to my other part, because my other part is this. First off, I don't like people getting a note to cheat. Second off, if you're getting a note to cheat, that means you're doing so and you're cheating. If it's not something that is explicitly tested for, I don't care what you do, because it's not against the rules.
I didn't view the therapeutic use exemption as a note to cheat.
You don't.
That was inside the rules. They wrote the rules that way. Gotta listen. If it's in the rules, I almost feel like you're obligated as an athlete to go to the edge of the rules. So if you put that in there, you may be saying to some, hey, you don't want to do it? No problem. But to the people who have no problem with that,
right,
you're allowing them to run they're going to run as close to the line as they can without stepping.
I mean, most people are going to run over the line and claim they didn't run over the line.
Okay, maybe, but some people, like, if steroids were legal and I was in the organization, I would take steroids. If therapeutic use exemption was in play and I was in that league, I would run right up to that line. Now, I'd try not to cross it. I wouldn't cross it. But if you're going to tell me that this is where the line is inside the sport, well, I'm going to the line, dude.
But here's the problem. Steroids are always illegal depending on where you live. Like if you live in the United States, steroids are always illegal. Doesn't matter if they're not against the rules of your chosen combat sport. It's a controlled substance that you can't just go to the store and buy
without a doctor's note.
Yeah, and even with the doctor's note, you can't really just go to the store and buy it. You got to go to a pharmacy, and they're going to give you your medicine, which I feel.
But at least you're having to run through those particular channels.
Right. And now getting to grappling, what you've talked about, you have the IBJJF and you have ADCC. I just want uniformity, man. Like, I don't really necessarily care one way or the other. I mean, if I was a competitor, maybe I would care. Maybe if I was a competitor who prided themselves on being clean and I knew that everybody could get away with just doing whatever they wanted to do, maybe I would care. But I don't feel like I've come across too many combatants who have this sort of straight edge mindset when it comes to performance enhancers.
It's a little bit of a slippery slope, I think, because like what Chael said, yeah, I thought it was going to enhance my performance. That's why I did it. Caffeine is a performance enhancer off of baseline.
Yeah.
Off of your baseline, caffeine is a performance enhancer.
Well, there's a reason why people get a cup of coffee before they start their day.
A protein shake, couple of protein shakes every day. You can't take that in naturally. You can't take that amount of protein in naturally.
Right.
You know, and so I'm not necessarily making the argument for PEDs.
But what is and what isn't?
I am saying we should use a little consistency across the board. We're going to say it's just weird the things we put on the banned list and the things we don't.
Right.
Now, having said that, specifically focused on grappling, what do you think, man? So IBJ, let's just take that one out of the equation. They test. Do they do a good job? Different discussion. Right. ADCC, EBI, combat jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I don't care.
Do we want it? But as a community, though, you don't care. You don't care now. But now, me and you are on the board of our job is to try to make jiu-jitsu the best thing that it can be, and not just from a competitive aspect. You got to take into consideration too that you've got tons of people that train this art with no interest in the competition. They don't know anything about the competitions. They couldn't care less. It's just a dad and his kids that got into it to have something to do together sometimes. Do we want performance enhancing drugs in that culture, or do we want to, I don't even want to say integrity. Do we want to protect the integrity of jiu-jitsu? Maybe that's something that we've just ascribed to jiu-jitsu that never really was a part of it, like that romantic part of the martial arts of like, I love that part of martial arts, but I also project that onto martial arts a little bit. Like maybe that doesn't belong there. You know, like, what do you think, man?
It's hard because I'm not a competitor, and I feel like the competitors are the ones that need to speak up and sort of decide what is and isn't okay, because
they seem to be split.
Right. And that's sort of the issue. And you know, when you look at jiu-jitsu, it is a sport with a lot of, you know, different perspectives and different opinions. I mein, we could just talk about the rule set alone across the board. And there's a lot of dissension between traditional grapplers, a lot of dissension between gi players, no gi players, etc. I don't know how to get to the answer to that, but I do feel like as the sport continues to grow in popularity and get more and more sort of eyeballs on it, that there's going to be a time and place where you're going to have more uniformity across the board. And that discussion is not only going to have to take place, but there's going to have to be some decisions that are made.
You know, we've talked about how watching jiu-jitsu in this stage of its growth, how we've kind of compared it to the UFC, like UFC 40.
Right.
That's kind of the stage that we're at now. And I don't know at what show was it where the quote unquote unified rules became a thing?
UFC 33.
We're right in that stage, man. We're right in that era where MMA at this point in its trajectory, it had to sit down and start putting together some unified rules and a board. And it may be time for jiu-jitsu to do something like that. And the IBJJF has tried to become that.
Right.
But I think a lot of the community rejects them as the leader. Like a lot of the community doesn't mind that. And listen, IBJJF runs some great open tournaments. They do a really good job, but they're also, they're like an organization that's making money off of tournaments. You know what I'm saying?
It's right. They're not so much worried about promoting necessarily.
Yes. It's not the same thing as a governing body.
Right.
It may be time for a governing body. Maybe not. Maybe that's the last thing we need.
And that's going to be really hard because, you know, again, I sort of base all of my points of view based on what I've experienced, you know, covering and being a fan of mixed martial arts. There have been several organizations who have wanted to be a sanctioning body, similar to like what you have in boxing with the WBC and things like that. I remember WAMA. WAMA was the World Alliance of Mixed Martial Arts.
I remember that.
They wanted.
They were involved with the pit fighting thing, right?
That's YAMA. That's completely different. YAMA, WAMA, Hamma Lamma Ding Dong or something. I don't know. But the bottom line is this: with WAMA, they were more into the idea of creating one title belt for, you know, one weight division. So like they wanted to be, I think their saying was one belt, one king or something like that.
Bringing together the Strike Force heavyweight champion versus the UFC heavyweight
right.
champion.
Exactly right. There hasn't really been anything as far as like, even you say the unified rules, which are, by the way, not unified anymore. Like you go to one state, it's completely different from the other.
0.5 scoring in some states.
It's not that so much. It's the idea of like what is and isn't a grounded opponent. You know, if you put your hand down, does that mean you're grounded or are you playing the game?
That's weird.
You know, and you would think if you're fighting in one state compared to another, as long as both those states are in the United States, it would be the same sport. But that's not necessarily the case. Now, the differences are minute. They're you know, at times maybe even insignificant in most fights because they don't come into play, but they're still different sports under different rule sets in a roundabout way. It would be very hard if someone tried to come in and be the authority for jiu-jitsu. I think the one thing that is see, this is what I think is lovely about jiu-jitsu and also somewhat hard and scary about jiu-jitsu. The only sanctioning body that has anything to do with jiu-jitsu as a whole is combat jiu-jitsu because it takes place in certain states that the athletic commission goes, look, this is striking. Like you can't put on combat jiu-jitsu in the state of California without camo getting involved. You're going to have some issues. It would be hard to bring combat jiu-jitsu to a state like Nevada. You'd at least have to get it, you know, get some sort of answers from the athletic commission there. Other states aren't so upset with it. But how do you start to sanction and regulate, well, let's just say no-gi jiu-jitsu, okay? We're not going to say jiu-jitsu as a whole, just no-gi jiu-jitsu. Do you welcome the athletic commission to get involved? Does the athletic commission want to get involved? Because at the end of the day, what is that going to do? If the athletic commission gets involved with regulating no-gi jiu-jitsu, that's going to cost a lot more money. You know,
and it's going to probably make a lot of these promotions that have popped up go away.
Right.
And I don't know if that's what we need.
I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of uniformity, but at the cost of uniformity is a real life expense that might just eliminate opportunities for people to grapple at a high level.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, man. What about greasing?
Oh, man. So that's the other thing. You said slippery slope a few moments ago, and I was like, all right, that's a perfect
Should have
segue.
jumped in right there.
Going back to UFC 287, you had a co-main event between Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal. Gilbert Burns has since apologized for his comments, but he insinuated that Masvidal was a little slippery. He was a little slick and not in his, cool stylistic ways. Claimed that he put lotion on. I have heard in the past that strikers in MMA have done things like baby oil baths. Now, is that true? I don't know. I know that I think there was a fight with Roger Huerta and Melvin Gillard.
Okay.
And I think the fight was called a no contest because they felt, I think it was Melvin. You have to look it up maybe in the Fight Finder, but I believe that they felt that Melvin Gillard was oiled up. Now, I'm not someone who can tell you how or how not to do this and get away with it or not get away with it and how you would really test them. But we've seen this still, in grappling, like that's the whole Gordon Ryan argument about Nicky Rod, right?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Part of his argument got shot down, though. Nicky Rod came out clean. He went and got tested on the steroids or he got his blood tested, showed that at least for the last several months through his biggest matches that he's had over the last 6 months, he hasn't been taking anything.
Right.
So
but has there been any baby oil on him? How do you figure that out?
Now there we got a different story because I don't know. How do you prove that? Because don't they just, a lot of it is like, okay, you take a hot bath, you slick up with baby oil,
right?
You wash it all off again in a hot bath, and then go to bed. And then the next time you break a sweat, you got baby oil pouring out of your skin.
Can I ask you to be the human guinea pig for ground control?
Yeah.
Can we get
test?
Yeah. Can we get like someone to oil you up before class and then have you roll a bit?
Depends on who we get. Let's take applications.
Okay. All right.
Who wants to come grease Brandon up before class?
Yeah. Who's going to turn B-Mac into Grease Mac?
I bet we don't get a lot of applications.
Probably not. I'm not signing up for that. But you are a married guy. You might be able to get your wife to do it.
I think I'd have a better chance getting you to do it.
Probably. But can we do it? Because I would like to see in your experience, and I would like you to not tell anyone who you're going to roll with, that you've done it.
Can we do this?
What's that?
Keelan, yes. Okay, Keelan says yes.
Okay.
He says that's a YouTube video.
Okay, so we can do this undercover?
Yeah.
I like it.
Can we release it on ground control?
Absolutely. This is 100%. Yeah, this is
investigative journalism.
This is show prep to the nth degree. This is very important.
Okay, I'm in.
I'm curious, and it's got to be make sure you get baby oil that's not scented. We don't need you smelling flowery.
I'm gonna do my homework. I'm gonna dig in and learn the right way to do it, and I'll smell ripe, dude. I won't be
perfect
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I want you to go to the drugstore and be like, do you have baby oil in really disgusting old man's flavor? Yeah.
Yeah, I want that BO.
Right.
Not just that baby oil. I want that body odor baby oil. That double BO, baby.
Yeah, there we go. Because do you think, because here's the thing too, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, I can see, in the example that I made earlier where it's a striker versus a grappler, I can see where it would benefit a striker, but when you're also grappling someone, isn't that going to screw you up?
Depends on what kind of grappler you are and who you're facing, man. Think about the situation with Nicky Rod and Gordon. What are the chances that Nicky Rod is gonna catch Gordon? Even Nicky Rod's mind, not high, right?
Right.
And what are the chances that Gordon is gonna catch a sub on Nicky? Strong chance he's gonna get into a good position and get a good look.
Right.
Which he did.
Right. But that's the thing too. Where do you grease? If you're somewhat do you grease your own legs? Because that's going to screw up.
It's like the hokey pokey. You got to put your whole self in.
Right. Okay.
You got to get that whole thing, baby. You don't know if Gordon's jumping on your arm or your neck or your legs. He's coming after it all. So Got to catch the whole thing. Hokey pokey, that dude.
Now, what about the rash guard? I mean, the rash guard as a whole should prevent some of that greasing, no?
Yeah. Now, long sleeve rash guard, spats, that would prevent the greasing from really being an issue.
But I mean, I don't know.
But now we might as well be training in the gi. Like now
Okay.
we're like, see, there's really 3 styles of grappling, even without strikes. There's training in the gi,
Mm-hmm.
high friction. Training no gi, low friction. Training no gi with shorts and no shirt, almost no friction at all.
Right.
You know, not just low friction, almost no friction. It's so hard to hold on to somebody like that. So you add grease, baby oil, lotion, whatever into the situation right there, and you're going to be almost it's going to be trying to like grab a pig on the like you can't. He's just slipping out, dude.
Right.
There's no way. And for anybody to ever catch a sub at ADCC is like almost insane to me.
Yeah.
There's just like these guys coming out with no, like Nicky Rod coming out in short shorts and no shirt on. Like, how are you? And he's so explosive and willing to spend all his athleticism in this one moment. How are you supposed to hold on to that guy?
How do you even ride the back when they don't have a rash guard on?
I mean,
a body triangle might even move more.
Technique's got to be so good.
Right.
You know, and at that level, those guys are so good. But if you put a couple of purple belts out there and watch them try to sub each other like that, you're never gonna see a sub. I mean, it'd be so rare.
Now we've talked steroids, we've talked greasing. You've actually hit on something that I think is maybe sort of the tell-all to why people that don't care about any of it sort of point to, and that is, well, doesn't great technique overcome all?
No,
I agree with you. It does not.
That's a myth. That's a myth.
Yeah,
it covers a wide chasm.
And great technique overcomes strength, and the idea that the guy that is really super strong doesn't also have the same technique as you.
It's like, you ever heard that phrase, hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work hard?
Right.
Like, yeah. If we're not equal,
right,
and you're not working hard, I can catch up and surpass you.
Correct.
Okay. But if we're not equal and then you work hard and I work hard, dude, it's hard to close that gap, right? Same thing here. Like, great technique, yes, it covers many sins. That's true. But it doesn't cover them all. It doesn't cover them all. If I'm 170 pounds with great technique and you're 250 pounds with really good but not great technique, it's going to be hard for me from that small difference in my technique to close that giant gap in size.
I don't know if we've answered any questions, at least not yet. Not until we get out in the field and do your research.
Yeah, I'm going to come back with a full report.
I'm excited for it.
I don't know when this is going to be, but we're going to make it happen. Keelan said it's on.
All right, well, perfect. I can't wait. And I think that pretty much does it. This is Ground Control, the juicy and greasy edition.
Yeah, this is the juicy edition, baby.
And I like my burgers juicy and greasy, so it's about time we put out a podcast that had both of those elements as well.
You know what you should do for the next combat jiu-jitsu is you should get some of those little booty shorts that say juicy on the back.
Are you gonna take off your shirt and be greasy then? Because we got to have both sides of the argument, juicy and greasy.
But don't you think that would look good if you just
me?
Juicy right across your butt?
No. But I do believe there's a whole brand though that just does that. So
yeah, that's why I'm gonna get some of those for you.
You should get it and be greasy. That could be a whole jiu-jitsu brand right there, greasy. No?
TJ Juicy DeSantis.
That's a bad idea. No.
Juicy DeSantis.
Grease-mac. I like Grease-mac. Okay. That's how, that might be how I have my mac and cheese.
Don't deflect.
Put some burger in it, Grease-mac.
Don't deflect, Juicy.
I gotta go.
All right, I'll see you, dude. Love you.